In what has been an absolute insane week for Arsenal in the transfer market, they are getting close to signing yet another player, being Cristhian Mosquera from Valencia. Now in this video we're going to talk about why Arsenal are going out to buy this player and just what you can expect from him and his impact he will bring to the team straight away. So let's get into it. Now it's fair to say Arsenal are moving at increasing pace in the transfer market. A lot of people have been critical of the fact that no forward signings have come in and we have yet to see that still, but it's quite clear that the team needed padding out in a squad perspective and they are going out to do that job, with Norgard, Kepa and now Mosquera looking to join the club. Now Cristhian Mosquera is a 20-year-old Spanish defender who plays for Valencia, and despite being incredibly young he has played a huge amount of minutes in La Liga for Valencia and getting over 3,000 minutes last season, so he is experienced at a high level, which is definitely something Arsenal have wanted. It's also clear that Arsenal have definitely needed some sort of backup to William Saliba. William Saliba's minutes per season have been going up and up and up, and in 2 seasons in a row he has played over 4,000 minutes for the club, which is not sustainable, and I'm not surprised that some of his performances have dropped off near the end of the season, which is something Arsenal have needed to address. Now Cristhian Mosquera is probably the perfect player to come in. Not the only option, there's people like Ribeiro we've spoken about, and there's even been links to people like Dean Howson before he went to Real Madrid, but nevertheless it's quite clear that they wanted a versatile player. Now Mosquera is also in that same versatile mould. Despite being right-footed, he has actually played majority on the left for Valencia and showed decent enough passing level within them angles, but he is still a player that you can play on that right centre-back role. I've seen him switch from either side for Spain's under-21s, and I think that's what Arsenal want, someone that can provide cover in both left centre-back and right centre-back, but also improve to be that project player. Now, first of all, to describe this guy in simpler terms, he is a super aggressive player. This guy is willing to come very far out of the defence and push into players, physically get into them to win the ball, and he is someone that isn't going to sit off and take his time to win tackles. When we were talking about Yoel Hato, he can do this physical nature, but he is someone that will willingly sit off if he thinks it's the best idea. Mosquera is a much more rabid defender. He wants to get to them gaps quickly and will close them down really fast and be very physical in them duels, which I think is his best attribute. He's also someone that is very good at defending the wide areas, having this brilliant speed and the strength that he has. He's a big guy, around 6'3" in height, and he is very strong. He can cover the wide stretches very well, and if players are trying to run in on the wings and the fullbacks have pushed up, he will come over to cover them runs, which does remind you of a certain Arsenal centre-back, I think, overall. And considering how Valencia play, they are very much a team that have to defend without the ball a lot of the times. And you will see Mosquera really have to cover these gaps and use his pace brilliantly to be physical in these duels to win the ball back. And I think when you look at Arsenal's current construct of the team, it actually makes sense we're looking for this profile, because he is very similar to a Gabriel. And despite this guy being very versatile and being able to play left centre-back and doing it well, he is ultimately a right centre-back as well, considering he is right-footed. This means that if he is able to come in for Arsenal's team, if Arsenal do keep Kivior or whatever's going on with that situation, it is a much better partnership than a Saliba and a Kivior. The reason why I say this is because Saliba and Kivior are not really them aggressive type of defenders. They're very much sit off players, take their time and then win the ball back, and Saliba does it a little bit more physically than someone like Kivior. Ultimately, I think the reason why Gabriel and Saliba work incredibly well for Arsenal is because Gabriel is that more aggressive type of defender that will come out and push the defence, and Saliba is the one that will cover the recovery runs and run backwards to help. They can both versatilely do the other thing if they need to. Saliba can come forward and head the ball, but it's not his priority, and in most instances Arsenal will try and get Gabriel to do that aggressive work, while Saliba is the more technical player from deep. I think Mosquera on that right centre-back role would be a more physical type, while you could have Kivior, that more long-passing, deeper player, rather than Mosquera coming out and being enforcing the actions. And if I was to compare Mosquera to anyone loosely within the footballing world, I would say Rudiger from Real Madrid is a really good example. Someone that is willing to push out that defence incredibly quickly, very fast players, and close their gaps, but also be very good in them defensive areas and with the ball. Now, something I will say about Mosquera as well is that even though a lot of his stats I think aren't going to be very great because of maybe the team he plays for, 12th most possession-based team in the league, so it is hard to maybe gauge it on the ball stats specifically, but you can clearly see the talent there. Something I really like about him specifically is how good he is at blocking. I don't really think Arsenal have many insane blockers in our team other than Gabriel. I think Saliba can be okay at it, but I even think he kind of shies away sometimes. I think Gabriel just running at people, putting his body on the line is very important. And I think Mosquera brings that in the team. He is someone that in these defensive areas, if he's not been able to push up and he's been penned back into these areas, he will take his time and be willing to put his body on the line to get the tackles and more importantly the blocks in. He's not someone that is going to be super aggressive in tackles when you're in this sort of low block, mid block system, but he will be waiting and then do the blocks that are needed, which I think maybe is something that Arsenal have also been looking at within this transfer. And I think when we talk about the defensive aspects of Mosquera as a player, he is more seen as a sweeper. You can see this information in front of me and it kind of talks about his sweeping brilliance because he really does just pick up the pieces in them positions, and because he is so quick, it really gives you legs to close gaps a lot quicker. This could really help with someone like Zubimendi, who I know people have argued may get overrun sometimes. This would probably help that. I actually think this will get better with a team like Arsenal because at least Arsenal you would think would have more pressure than a team like Valencia, so he actually has a lot less work to do in these sort of closing gaps and defensive areas. He can be someone that diffuses situations, hold up against a player in a dual one-on-one and be careful. He isn't that rash, I would say. Even if his profile is someone that you would assume is quite a rash player, he actually isn't and doesn't make that many fouls unless they are really tactical ones, which I do think is yet again another thing that Arsenal implement within their team to stop counter-attacks. I think if you are playing against teams that want to break quickly, his pace is very important, but also the fact that he doesn't have to be on the ball all the time creating things in the forward areas. I think given the fact that we can give him time and not necessarily have him have to do all this defensive work, I think that he will be a lot more associated with only having to do a couple of recoveries per game rather to all the ones he has to do for Valencia, which would be an interesting transition to see. Now that's overall kind of how he is defensively. Obviously there is some weaknesses which we will go through at the end of the video, but overall I think that is the sort of player you can expect from his defensive. I expect most of his better work to be outside the box than in the box, but he can definitely still develop that as well. Now when you look at football players nowadays, especially centre backs, there has to be a big discussion about their on the ball style. Pretty much every centre back that's at a top elite level has to have some sort of good ability at dictating tempo, being able to pass it between the lines or run with the ball, some sort of progressive nature. Now Mosquera's passing is very interesting. What I will say by me personally and what I've watched by him is when he picks up the ball in these defensive areas, he has an idea that he wants to quickly get that ball out into the forward areas. There's a few times I've seen it for the Spain under-21 side. I've watched him throughout the Euros where there might be a counter-attack against him, he'll recover, he'll get the ball maybe from a cross or he'll just tackle someone, and straight away he wants to make that run or that pass into that forward area rather than necessarily just passing it off to someone else to do all the work. He's very intent in that way. Now his progressive passes are around 3.3 per 90 and his progressive carries are around 1, which is actually quite good for a centre back. I do think this is boosted however because what I said is true, and as much as that is really good, there is a lot of space when you get these sort of counter-attacky end-to-end football, and that I think allows him to run into that space. I don't think he's necessarily going to do it to break the lines against a team that are defending deep, and that is the thing with his passing. I think his short passing is actually very good. I think he usually takes passes on that he knows he can complete from the short range at least, and he's quite good at quickly nipping passes in between the channels. If you have someone that is more of a natural creator, can come deeper and create for you, maybe a Zubimendi, maybe even an attacking midfielder, I think he'd work really well with them, being able to associate with them a lot quickly and give them the ball when they need it. But his long passing I definitely think can be a little bit weak overall. I think overall when you look at his passing, you look at the completion, it is very high, but I think yet again that comes into the play where he doesn't like doing long passes unless he feels like he is going to be able to do that pass. And a lot of the time that means that he doesn't really put it into the channels as much as he should do. He'll go into the centre sometimes, I think more than often, but only if there's a lot of space there. And you have to think when you're playing for Arsenal, that space in these little channels isn't going to be as big as it will be for Valencia, who don't have the ball a lot of the time. So that is something that obviously we'll have to adapt. Now, I will say that I don't want to put his passing down too much because he is very two-footed. He's actually very good on both feet at putting it through the lines. That's why he's played in left centre-back as well as right centre-back. And I do think there's a certain level if he can clearly improve that. He's only 20 years old. He's incredibly young for a centre-back. If you compare him to a lot of the minutes that other centre-backs have had around the same time, he's had a lot and that experience will be very helpful. And I think his passing level has that platform that is really good, but just needs a little bit of improvement, a little bit more encouragement on passes that he can do. Maybe a little bit more power on the balls, I think, would be more important. I think sometimes he does a little bit weak ones. But overall, I think in a 3-2-5 system, if Arsenal do continue to use this going forward, I actually think he'd be very suitable to that role. He'll put passes into the midfield, which I think will be very important. He can dictate tempo, something he needs to improve on, but it's definitely a certain level he is getting there. And he's that aggressive defender that Arsenal needs in these situations. I think if you have a situation where Arsenal are penning teams in, you have Mosquera as the one that is the furthest back from the rest of the team, and he could be that one-on-one defender that is calm, going to be fast and physical and win the ball back, very much like Saliba in that way. And he's also very tall, so it kind of works if Arsenal are going to have someone like Gabriel next to him, who is that more elite passer, or even Kivior if he does stay. Now, what I will say is probably my biggest weakness with him within talking about him is his physical duels in the air. Despite him being tall, about 6'2", 6'3", he isn't very good. You look at his stats, they don't look that impressive. And also, when you watch him, it's quite clear why. He mostly focuses on defending the player rather than the ball. Sometimes this can be fine, especially from deeper areas. But in the box, if something happens, if you lose the flight of the ball, if you lose the player, then they can get on the end of it if they're paying more attention, which is something I'm sure that we will try and adapt with him and get him to be a better level at. Overall, I think it makes a lot of sense to bring a guy like this in. I think when you talk about his mental attributes and the physical attributes that he has and the experience he has at his age, there's not many centre-backs like him. And ultimately being someone that can use both feet incredibly well and has a decent enough short passing and can improve on his long passing if he switches it a little bit more is absolutely fine. We need more project players. We've spoke about this a lot. I need more backup players. And ultimately, it's going to be someone that can play alongside Gabriel, can play alongside Kivior, can play alongside a Calafiore, while giving Saliba finally some rest. He won't come in for the big games at the moment. He's only 20 years old and it will take some time to get there for him, but he can easily play at the cup levels or the lower league prem games if he gets good guidance from the players around him, which we kind of now have. And for the reported fee of around £17 million, it is just a no-brainer. It's one of them transfers we need to make. We need to pad out the squad, and I would rather have a 20-year-old Mosquera coming off the bench if we have to, if we have injuries, than the players that we've had before shoving anyone in different positions. It's not really the way to go. Now, of course, there's going to be talks about us not signing a striker still, but yet again, everything's in motion and I still believe that will happen. So I think overall we can be happy with the amount of work that's going into these signings right now. The squad is, in my opinion, getting a little bit better, a lot better overall, and we're at least getting some cheaper backup options that are good enough to play in certain games where we can develop them, and I think that is the most important thing when we're building this team, which we are. Overall, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.